Would like to call the March 27th, 2013 Urban Design Commission meeting to order. Can we have a roll call?
Sahil. Dinwiddie.
Here.
Tybor.
Here.
Pratt.
Here.
Sullivan.
Here.
Emerton. Winchester.
Are there any disclosures?
Yes. I would like to recuse myself from case 2013-023 and from the case 2013-003 because I have a conflict of interest with both projects.
And I think you're a designer on that. Is that the conflict of interest?
Yes.
Okay. We'll go ahead and, is there any opposition to Monica's disclosure for withdrawing? Hearing none, Monica's excused. Are there any other disclosures? Hearing none, we'll move on. Annual election of officers. We are actually... Do we want to table this till Sharon's back? I expected Sharon to be here tonight. Francis, do you know if we have any other members or any other commissioners coming on in the immediate future?
I haven't heard of any, but I wouldn't know. I just came back from a vacation, actually.
Okay. We'll open it up for. Do we have any nominations for vice chair? Mr. Tybor.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Mr. Pratt to continue serving as vice chair.
Do we have a second? That second is by Commissioner Emerton. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, that motion passes. I'd like to open the floor for nominations for chair of the Urban Design Commission. Commissioner Pratt.
Yes, I move yourself, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dinwiddie, to be chairman for for as long as he chooses to stay on the commission.
And that is seconded by Commissioner Tybor. Yeah, we have no discussion. Is there any discussion? As there hearing no opposition, that motion passes. Our next item is the consent agenda. Are there any motions on the consent agenda? Can we get a motion to approve? Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda, seconded by Commissioner Tybor. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there any opposition? That motion passes. Our first case before us, we would expect Commissioner Emerton to, we'll call you later. Do we have a staff review for case 2013023?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Girl Scouts of Alaska are requesting final site plan and landscape plan approval for their Camp Singing Hills. This project, the proposed site plan, is consistent with many of the important policies in the 2006 Chugach Eagle River Comprehensive Plan update. The proposed site plan is considered by the department to be compatible with the existing and planned land uses surrounding the site. The department therefore recommends approval of the final public facility site plan and landscape plan, subject to conditions 1 through 7 on pages 3 and 4. The reason why this is before the commission is the reason why they didn't have to just simply go for a building permit is because the property is zoned PLI, and property within the PLI always has to have a site plan review, and so they're just sort of stuck in having to go through this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? Hearing no questions, would the petitioner like to come forward?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Dwayne Adams with USKH, representing the petitioner in this case. I do have there are a number of people here representing the Girl Scouts, and just as a preface to my comments, I would like Ms. Jane Anvik, who is a former assembly person, I should say, and chair of the board, to just give you a little bit of context and some background, and then I'll get into the meat of the discussion. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, member of the Commission, my name is Jane Anvik. I've served as a board member of the Girl Scouts of Alaska for the last 9 years because we build girls of courage, character, and confidence who change the world. The person who's handing out the Girl Scout cookies is Sue Perlis, who's the executive director of the Girl Scouts of Alaska. The cookie sale program, by the way, is the largest financial literacy program of young people in the United States of America. And so what girls learn is how to plan and approach and develop a business plan for the development of cookies, and that is the money that they use to be able to participate in camp. So I wanted to let you know what we're trying to do at the property that is before you tonight. The Girl Scouts of Alaska have owned the 40-acre site since the mid-'60s. It's designated as public lands and institutions, which, as Dwayne mentioned, I'm very familiar with, having served on the Assembly when we were developing zoning for the Chugach Eagle River area. What we plan to do is in 2009, we had a facility on that campus that was the victim of arson. And so it was burned to the ground. And the question before the Girl Scouts was, what should we do with a 40-acre parcel in the middle of Alaska, in the middle of Anchorage, that serves our 6,000 girls? What can we use this land for to achieve the highest and best uses for the expansion of leadership training programs for girls? We went through a 2-year process of strategic plan and visioning in relation to the needs of the girls and the opportunities associated with this site. We currently operate in the summertime a day camp facility. Actually, the facility is a yurt. We use the 40 acres as the day camp operations for girls from Anchorage as well as Eagle River in the valley. After a 2-year process of strategizing and visioning, and we received an appropriation from the state legislature to assist us with that planning, we developed the development of the concept plan for the process. That includes a single building on the land which would be used as an educational facility focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as outdoor education. In addition, there would be 5 yurts, which would be sleeping cabins, except they are yurts, accompanied by several miles of trails. This facility would be able to be used by troops year-round and provide opportunities for both winter and summer camping as well as educational opportunity. Our objective is to be able to build a facility that will fulfill that vision. Over the past 2 years, we raised $2 million from the Alaska State Legislature and other foundations to be able to start with the program, and since then, we have matched that $2 million with private sector funding. Our goal is to build a $4 million campus in Eagle River that would provide leadership opportunities for girls across South Central Alaska. We have unanimous approval for the site plan review before you by the Chugach Eagle River Community Council, and we respectfully request your approval of the site plan before us so that we can continue our work in providing leadership opportunities for girls in Alaska. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Your Honor.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jane.
I'll continue with just a little bit more. As Mr. McLaughlin said, staff said, this is kind of a unique situation in that we're on PLI lands, but if this were treated as any other property in the Chugach Eagle River area, we'd be simply dealing with a land use permit. But we are going through this, and so we do ask your indulgence, because it is a little bit different from a major facility that we might be trying to provide for a public facility that the public would routinely be a library or a school or any other facility. So I'll touch on that in a second. There has been a little confusion even with the public works staff with respect to what level of review is appropriate, but it doesn't really matter. We still are going through the full land use permit process, the building permit as it's required by the fire marshal and the city code. But we do lie outside the building service area, so that adds even a little complexity. With respect to the project components, I think you've seen the staff package. Access is as it is currently off Paradise Road near Edmonds Lake. There's a very short access road. There's a small parking lot there now. There will be another parking lot along the side. The road will be engineered to meet to current city standards, so it can support fire trucks and emergency vehicles as well as buses, so that children can be dropped off for the day use, as well as on weekends troops can be dropped off as well. There's an entry gate for security. There's parking on both sides, parallel parking you see, and additional parking, straight-in parking that I'll deal with in a second. A turnaround that's been coordinated with the city. Thank you, Jane. And what you see there on that turnaround has been coordinated so that the radii and the width and everything has been massaged and reflects input from the folks at Public Works. As Jane mentioned, there's the yurts off to the side. They'll have fully accessible and fire access to them. There's a restroom that provides for overnight facilitation of needs for those staying in the yurts. There's also a septic field that serves the entire facility, water source, and then there are trails and an amphitheater. All that's on your site plan. Now, with respect to the conditions of approval, we have no problem with those conditions of approval. I would note on the issue with respect to accessible trails, this is a result of a decision or further clarification by the Americans with Disabilities Accessibility Board back in March that gave a little more definition to what surface is, and while there is some in traffic engineering who would feel that this means that all trails must be paved, our own Parks Department does not hold that view, so it's not a simple and straightforward issue, but we'll work to resolve that. And if they hold us accountable, I think it has larger ramifications than just this project, certainly. I would ask your consideration of a couple other things, and I'll deal with these individually. I would like your consideration of a couple additional conditions of approval. Very unusual for a petitioner to actually ask for conditions of approval, but I'll explain this. There is some consideration whether paving of the roadway is required. This is a Girl Scout camp. It's very controlled with respect to who will be coming in here, how often they will be coming in here. So from a pure design standpoint, we really would prefer that this maintain a very rural setting, and that arrival sequence of going up a gravel road instead of a paved road kind of speaks to the mission of what we're trying to accomplish here. Now, the fire department is will entertain a petition to the fire marshal for consideration of relief from paving, but in talking to building safety, they would like some direction from the Urban Design Commission. So not to supplant due review, but I do suggest a simple provision, number 8 that you see, provide a fully engineered road and parking design that will support fire vehicles. Paving is not required by the Urban Design Commission. So this does not supplant the authority of the fire marshal, but we would ask your consideration that an unpaved entry road is appropriate for a Girl Scout camp. It's a very short road. It will not be creating a lot of noise or dust that's going to be problematic for the neighbors, and is certainly within the expectations that you would have for a camp situation. The second thing I would ask for is number 9, that I propose, apply for and receive a variance for parking should parking be proposed to be less than the number of spaces shown on the plans. The number that you see, the number 26, is a result of some discussions with staff, and we would suggest that because most people arrive by bus, that a variance may be possible, and Jill-Ann Inglis at the city has indicated that she would consider such a thing, and we simply ask that you allow us to go for a variance for a number less than that shown on plans that are before you tonight, but only with the understanding that we receive that variance. So again, it does not remove your authority, but it does allow us to go for a variance and to go lower than the 26, 27 spaces you see on the plan. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Tiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you had noted that you had some concern about staff's recommendation, or condition number 5, that shows slope percentages or provides spot elevation grades to demonstrate that the accessible parking stall, access aisle, and accessible routes and trails are adequate. Do you have any sort of recommendation for us of what kind of language would be potentially more ideal?
Through the chair, Commissioner Tybor, it's number 6 that I actually have the concern about, and that is that resolve in, I guess, let me provide a little background. The Americans with Disabilities Act guidelines are federal law. We don't have any way to get around that. We can't simply ignore them. And so what staff is, not Mr. McLaughlin, but the staff comment is simply iterating language that's in the code. And so resolving that seems, in my belief, duplicative of existing federal code. So with respect to resolution, I would suggest removing it. If you do anything, if you're uncomfortable doing that, we'll deal with it as it's stated.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pratt.
Yes, thank you. Have your recommendations, have you run those past staff?
Through the chair, Commissioner Pratt, yes, I did send those to Mr. McLaughlin, and he looked at that. He doesn't have any. I should let him speak for himself.
Right.
He did not have time to run this through the departments, the commenting departments, but I believe he would suggest that procedurally we're pretty clean here, and I defer to him.
Yeah, I have no objection to the proposed conditions by the petitioner.
Okay. And then just for clarification, on the second point about parking, what you're asking the Urban Design Commission is just the authority to apply for a variance, and if that's granted, then that's fine. If it's not, then that's fine.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I guess one other thing, comment, just on the STEM program. I just love that program, and I'm just going to make a comment because I'm executive director of a organization called Consumer Energy Alliance Alaska, and we're affiliated with Consumer Energy Alliance, a nationwide organization. And they've actually taken that program and moved it into what they call the C-STEM program. Communications is kind of added at the front end of the science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And the idea there is that every child is an engineer, every child is an artist, and to incorporate the arts and the scientists and the entirety of an individual in terms of moving these programs forward. So I guess I just couldn't resist just saying thank you for doing that. You might want to look into the C-STEM program. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Commissioner Winchester.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Adams. It's a great program that you're representing there.
Thank you.
A couple of things. At least in my experience, not paving the fire vehicle access is not an uncommon. I'm just speaking to the commissioners. Not an uncommon practice in certain situations. Certainly, traffic has, and other people have opinions about it. But it's certainly something I would support in this particular scenario. Further, the variance on the parking I would also support, because I think that we oftentimes forget the carbon footprint that we create in creating parking places that are never used, specifically in the area of asphalt, and just the energy required to make those, when in fact they sit there forever vacant. And in your particular case, I'll be supporting that particular item as well, because I believe that having parking that meets the requirements of the specific facility, and each facility has its own unique needs and standards, is far more important than meeting some standard, which oftentimes just wastes public funds and carbon footprint. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
If I may follow up through the chair, one of the issues is, first of all, we're trying to retain a sustainable ethic here, and impermeable pavement is counter to what we're trying to achieve. So that's one issue. And with respect to the fire marshal, his concern is that on gravel roads, fire trucks can get stuck, but these are being engineered fully to municipal standards. And this does not usurp their review of that particular thing. It just helps us get a little purchase, perhaps. Thank you.
Mr. Adams, I guess on that same subject, can you reduce the site footprint by the infiltration you get for not paving? By basically your SWIP, or because if you pave it, you have that much impermeable space and that water has to go somewhere. Can you reduce the overall footprint by doing that?
Certainly we can, yes. Yeah, it's the parking also. If we can reduce the parking, I mean,
absolutely.
We're trying to achieve two goals with those two pieces.
Yeah, I think this commission understands that. Everybody loves cookies, so I don't think we need to hear anything else.
Oh, were there cookies? Oh, I'll be darned.
Are there any other questions? Can we entertain a motion to approve?
Thank you very much.
All right, somebody step out on the ledge. Thank you, Commissioner Tiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move for approval of UDC case 2013-023, review of the final site plan and landscape plan for Singing Hills Girl Scout Camp. And I move for the approval subject to staff's department recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and striking 6. Condition 7 now being condition 6, and the two additional proposed recommendations 8 and 9 that would be 7 and 8.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. That has been seconded by Commissioner Pratt. Would you like to speak to your motion, Commissioner Tiber?
Yes, I intend to support the motion. Again, as has been stated here numerous times, it's a great program. I think it's a great project. I don't see any reason to I don't have any objection to removing condition 6 from the recommendation, staff's recommendations, and I'm happy to add 8 and 9. I think they make good sense. So I intend to support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Commissioner Pratt.
Yes, just a few other few findings. I think that the approval of this would, it complies with municipal codes and standards of this type. I think it conforms with the comprehensive plans and goals and policies of the municipality. And the approval is supported by the staff report, and it's also supported by testimony and answers to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Is there any other comment?
Do we need to have findings?
Yeah, Commissioner Pratt provided that.
Okay.
Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, that motion is approved. Thank you. Our next case is case number 2013-003, Covenant House of Alaska sign variance for B2C Central Business District periphery. Do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for a variance for the placement of building signs for a sign to exceed the maximum height allowed in a non-residential district. The regulation states, quote, all projecting signs shall have a maximum height of 14 feet and a minimum clearance of 8 feet from the ground to the bottom of the sign. The petitioner's requested variance is for a sign with a maximum height of 25 feet 11 inches and a minimum height of 17 feet and 11 inches. The property is zoned B2C Central Business District periphery. In regards to standard number 1, the standard appears to be partially met. There do not appear to be special conditions that are peculiar to this site and which are not applicable to other land in the same district. In regards to standard number 2, the department finds that the standard appears to be partially met. The applicant is not deprived of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the area for standard number 2. For standard number 3, the standard does not appear to be met. There do not appear to be special conditions particular to this property which warrant a variance from the sign code. In regards to standard number 4, this standard is met. The petitioner's site is bordered by an unnamed alley to the north, Barrow Street to the east, East 8th Avenue to the south, and A Street to the west. The site is surrounded by a hotel, a government office, other nonprofit offices, I believe it's the Salvation Army, residential homes, and parking lots. The site is different from other properties in the area because it is a destination for at-risk and in-crisis youth, and the surrounding neighborhood will benefit from easily visible signage for the Covenant House. The granting of the variance would be in harmony with the objectives of the sign ordinance and not detrimental to neighboring properties. Standard number 5 is likewise met. This standard is met. The granting of the variance will not materially add to the visual clutter along A Street. There are not many distracting signs along this section of A Street because most of the buildings are public buildings and nonprofit offices as opposed to commercial businesses. The public welfare is not affected by the proposed sign. Standard number 6 appears to be not met. The petitioner could provide a sign that conforms to the required height limit of 14 feet. Denial of this variance does not hinder a reasonable use of the property. There were 2 public comments that were received. Both of these public comments were in opposition to the granting of the variance. The Downtown Community Council weighed in. They provided written comments in support of granting of the variance, the proposed sign. As the applicant does not appear to substantially meet standards 1, 2, 3, and 6, the department must recommend denial of the variance. They sort of fall into one of 4 categories. Either you don't meet the standard, you partially meet it, you substantially meet it, or you fully meet it. They need substantial or fully on all 6 standards in order to be approved for the sign variance. Therefore, the department, having taken a strict application of these standards, must recommend denial of the variance. However, if after this hearing, this public hearing, the commission finds that all 6 standards are substantially met, then approval should be subject to conditions 1 through 3 on page 5 of the packet. Just a couple procedural sort of process notes to keep in mind. There are only 5 commissioners here, and so it needs to be a unanimous vote. For the variance to be approved, all 5 would need to vote in favor. If any one of the 5 opposes granting of the sign variance, then it would be denied, just so that everyone's aware of that situation. The petitioner couldn't wait any longer for more commissioners to come on the board, or later on, they really, for their project needs, need a decision now, and so they weren't able to take the free bare quorum postponement to a future meeting. The board did really well on findings in the last case. I hope that they'll have findings either for or against each of the standards for this case as well. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The petitioner is here to provide a presentation. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, thank you. There were 3 comments received. Is that right? 2 in opposition, 1 in support.
Yes, 2 members of the public. They appear to be neighbors in the area. Private people wrote in comments of opposition. I could look for the page in the packet there. But the Downtown Community Council provided a letter in support of granting the commission granting the variance.
Okay, thank you. And staff's finding in standard. Well, first of all, the standards. There are no standards now for sign variance, so you adopted some zoning standards and
That's exactly right.
kind of recrafted them to apply to signs.
That's right.
And one more question, Mr. Chairman. On standard number 3, you state that the petitioner states that exterior security cameras obstruct the visibility of the building sign from the street. Do the security cameras, is it your understanding that the security cameras obstruct the visibility of the building sign, or that the building sign obstructs the view of the street of the camera?
That's an excellent question, Mr. Pratt. I don't know the answer to that. I guess
I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you could direct it to the petitioner, they may answer that in their comments.
Okay, I was just confused on that point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Are there any other questions of staff? I have a question. On condition number 3, special conditions and circumstances do not result of actions of the applicant, and such conditions and circumstances do not merely constitute punctuatory hardship or inconvenience. In your recommendation, is this standard is not met? One of the questions I have, and maybe the petitioner will present this, is, isn't the Covenant House, I mean, if I didn't know what the Covenant House did, I wouldn't know exactly what they do. I mean, they're a place that we want publicly recognized. I guess my question would be is if it was up to me, I'd have a sign that every kid that was wandering the street could find easily, and the place would be lit up by neon. But I just don't understand why the standard isn't met because of special circumstances. So I guess how much more special circumstances can the Covenant House have that don't meet? It just seems ambiguous.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Staff, the department takes the intent of this standard to mean physical circumstance of the property. So is there some sort of physical is there some sort of reason other than its use, the fact that it serves on, homeless teens for Alaska? Is there something other than the use that that is good justification why this isn't, granting them a special exception other than the fact that why it's used? The code doesn't treat a nonprofit such as this differently than a commercial building, and so it sort of groups them together. And the board may have a different view of whether or not granting the variance is appropriate if it was a commercial building as opposed to the type of use it has. But the staff just sort of looked at the physical circumstances of the property and not its particular use. But so I think that the petitioners made the argument or a similar argument to the one that you just outlined.
Thank you. Commissioner Winchester.
Yes, thank you. Couple of questions. It appears that you did look into the physical considerations of the piece of property. Did you look into the physical considerations of the actual road, the one-way access, the topography of the road, the way that the road actually goes up and then back down, that does those sort of additional obscuration of those sorts of things? Or was that part of your analysis here, or was it just purely the physical property itself?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Winchester. Yes, staff took those into account, but staff doesn't have any specialized knowledge that maybe the petitioner and its design team may know more about the site. What staff did was, stood at the park strip, counted where the bus stops were, took into account the information that was provided by the petitioner in the packet. But the petitioner is welcome, and the commission is welcome to disagree with staff's finding.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, we'd like the petitioner to come forward. And one quick note as of item of business, this is a public hearing, and because of such, I need to read a quick little item. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after the Urban Design Commission's final decision. Any individual may request written findings from any commission decision within 7 days. Thank you. With that out of the way, please present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. My name is Michael Fredericks, and I don't have cookies today. But I am with RIM First People, and I am representing the Covenant House of Alaska on this signage variance request. With me here today, I have Allison Kerr, the Executive Director of Covenant House, Jenny LaChance, a former user of the Covenant House, who now sits on an advisory committee, Sean Holdridge with Cook Inlet Housing Authority, who is the project manager for the project, as well as Bryce Klug and James Doherty with RIM Architects. I'd like to thank staff for their review of our proposal for a variance, and also you for your time in reviewing this request. I'll start with a brief history of Covenant House. It sounds like some of you know what the organization is and does, but I think that there's some really important factors about their service line that have affected the design of the building and also the variance request. Covenant House is a nonprofit private agency that provides support and shelter to youth in crisis. They've been doing this since 1988. The crisis shelter is a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week operation. The doors are never closed for youth. Because of, unfortunately, increased demand, the Covenant House is building a new facility that'll be 41,000 square feet. It'll have up to 60 beds, or it will support up to 60 youth sleeping there in the crisis facility. It will have workforce development, housing services, educational assistance, and case management for youth. A very important thing to know about is the youth who they will serve in context to the sign variance. And They are serving youth from all over Alaska. That's incredibly important because many of the youth they serve will be coming from rural areas. This is the only service crisis shelter of its kind in this location, and so they're servicing kids from rural Alaska, from the Kenai Peninsula, from Fairbanks and other urban hubs. So there are kids coming here from all over. They're serving youth from as young as 13 years old to 20 years old. It is a voluntary program, so youth are going there to seek shelter and guidance in their most largest points of crisis and need of shelter. Youth get there through community outreach that the Covenant House does, going around town, looking for youth in crisis, and also through referral from other agencies. And they are often abandoned. They are victim of sex trafficking and crimes, and they are runaways in very high crisis situations. The new facility and the new location, in your package, there's a lot of information about where that is. It's on the corner of 8th and A Street. A Street is an incredibly busy street for this location, but that is both a good and challenging thing. Youth will be coming from the south on A Street, on buses, on foot from the Park Strip, and also from the downtown core. There's an existing bus stop that will be used at the center of the site. That is also in your packet, and I can show you, but I want to get through my 10 minutes. One of the things that we've done with the building design is over the last 10 years, this project has been in development, and there's been incredible amounts of input, stakeholder input from the community, the neighbors, the youth, the staff, community leaders, and people that are invested in the program. And the building design is a response to that, to being a good neighbor, to getting kids into the building efficiently, getting them out of the public view. The building has its main entry on the alley, which is a bit unique. And the sign that we are proposing, the one sign on the building, is incredibly important to getting the youth to that entry. The other unique thing about the building, in this case, as a response to neighbors and that input that we received over these past planning years, is that the building is set back 25 feet from the edge of the curb and has a very extra wide sidewalk so that we can maintain the youth safety who are walking up that street, getting off the bus, and going into the facility. We are requesting this variance specifically to increase visibility for just what one of the commissioners mentioned, and that is to get children out of that very highly trafficked corridor and into the building, and also for them to see that as they're traveling north on A Street or walking from the Park Strip. The building, the signage at its maximum allowable height of 14 feet cannot be seen because of the crown in the road. We are tasked with meeting the 6 standards of approval, and having met 1, 2, 4, and 5, I'd like to just spend a little bit of focused time on standard 3 and 6. Standard 3, again, just reiterating, is the special conditions or circumstances that constitute pecuniary hardship, such as obstructions, trees, things with the site. And I would respectfully submit that there is some obstructions with our site and the location of the sign, and that is the crown in the road on A Street. I'll just over here and show you what is in your packets. I've provided a photo taken from the Park Strip, 9th Avenue and A Street, showing where the required height of the sign would be, and with the busyness of traffic and the crown in the road, that sign height would not be seen. And this is, again, the beacon to those children traveling up A Street. I've also shown you where our proposed sign height would be clearly visible to youth traveling by foot or by bus. So I believe that there are special conditions and circumstances that don't have to do with the fact that this is the organization that they are. It simply has to do with the site. It's incredibly important also in response to the concerns of the neighbors that youth travel quickly and efficiently into that main entry, which was placed in response to their needs. And we want to be a good neighbor and make sure that happens. Standard number 6, having been not met, says that the variance needs to, have we come to the minimum variance that would make it possible to use this land with reasonable economic use, and that's obviously a paraphrase of that, but Covenant House is a nonprofit facility. They are not a commercial facility. They are not selling anything. They're providing services that benefit all of our community. And if the sign is not seen from A Street, then they are going to be serving less youth. It is incredibly hard for youth to make that first transition into the facility. We want to make that as easy as possible. Also, having a lower sign would likely be more, it would be potentially vandalized, and there would be more youth not able to easily find that main entry. So in closing, I'd like to save the remaining time for rebuttal and a little introduction from one of the youth that has used Covenant House, not a youth anymore, sorry. And also, thank you for your time and consideration, and ask that you approve our variance for the betterment of Covenant House and our community.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer LaChance, and I'm a former Covenant House youth. I would like to first say thank you for allowing me to speak today. At the age of 15, I walked through the doors of Covenant House for the first time, and that moment changed my life forever. I was there for 2 weeks the first time, and then 2 months the second time. And then for 5 years, I utilized many of their services, including counseling, case management, the shelter, job placement, school, and meals. In short, Covenant House provided me with all the things that my family couldn't. They helped me find my way to being an independent, successful, productive person in our society. Today, I consider it one of my many jobs in life to help Covenant House do that for other at-risk youth. The work that Covenant House does for our children is priceless. This sign that we're asking your approval for will help Covenant House reach more at-risk youth. Imagine being a 16-year-old child walking alone downtown in the dark looking for Covenant House. It would probably be frightening and a bit dangerous. This sign will help the youth in our community find the new shelter. It will make their journey to Covenant House one step easier. I know when I walked through the doors of Covenant House for the first time, it was a really difficult decision for me to make. But once I got inside, it was like a weight had been lifted off me, and it felt like I could finally start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Please help us show the youth in our community that they too can find the light at the end of their tunnel, and that they can also develop into independent, successful, productive people in our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, thank you. This is important. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. I have several questions, so just cut me off, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order.
Thank Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Pratt, a point of order for the meeting. We don't want to have a procedural error, and I think that at this time, if the chair agrees, before we ask specific questions of the petitioner, there should be an announcement that any member of the public can come and testify, and after everyone from the public, excluding people representing the petitioner, any member of the public, after they have testified, then the board can take its time in asking questions of the petitioner. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure there's not a procedural error.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. And as another point of order, we're actually going to move your time to public testimony as a not part of the petitioner, because we may have more questions. At this time, we are going to open the public hearing for case number 2013-003. Are there any members of the public that would like to come testify? Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing no public testimony, the public meeting is closed, and we'd like to have the petitioner come forward. Commissioner Pratt.
Thank you. I actually had a question for Jennifer, but I won't ask it. That's okay. I was just wondering, when you first found out about Covenant House, this whole issue surrounds, how people find their way, and it actually is. It's a wonderful thing. And my wife and I, we've been, supporters of Covenant House for 10 years. How did you find Covenant House? Were you just walking down the street? Oh, here's Covenant House. I think I'll swing in and see what's going on.
No, I didn't have a place to stay. Things weren't good with my family, and some friends at school had told me about Covenant House and had actually given me a landmark because I was 16, didn't know how to drive. They said it was across the street from Town Square. So for me, it was easy for me to find. My fear for our youth now is that it's not going to be as easy to find, and that's why I think the approval for the sign is so important.
Good, thank you. Can I continue?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. On the issue of was it? I think it was standard number 3. Can you clarify for me what's the deal between the sign and the camera?
Oh, I'm sorry for not having clarified that. The deal is that the cameras were located to provide optimal views of the street for security. There are 64 cameras in total. And the sign at that height, at the maximum height of 14 feet, obscures one of the major cameras that will be pointing down south on A Street.
Okay, so the sign would impair impair what the camera sees rather than the other way around. Thank you. Let's see, what was my next question? In terms of the entry in the alleyway, will that be like lit up? Will it have, I don't know, what'll that look like if somebody's walking past the alley? Will they say, "Oh, here's a safe place"?
The flag sign, as we're asking for variance, is the beginning of the wayfinding to that entry because it's right on the corner of the alley and A Street. And then as you turn the corner, there are further beacons that will be lit. There are 2 posts that will be created by an artist. And then there is the alleyway has a sidewalk that's covered by an awning. So there's quite a few indicators, and it will be lit with site lighting as required and needed to find the way. But that sign is critical to the beginning of that journey.
So once they get to the place where the sign is, it'll be an inviting area.
Yeah.
On it's page 16 of ours. I don't know. I don't know how I point you to this spot, but you say that if the sign variance is not approved, you will build a bigger sign than you otherwise would. Is that right?
Well, the sign that we're asking for variance for is under the largest size that we could have. And some of the public comments that came in, the 2 public comments, really did focus on size of the sign. We're not asking for a variance on the size, just the height. If we do, yes, we could make it bigger and probably would, but it wouldn't be effective, as effective as if it was moved up to the maximum height.
Okay.
Mostly because of the crown in the road.
Okay. And another issue is vandalism. I assume that all of the signs that currently exist in this neighborhood, this area, currently meet the specifications. Is vandalism a big deal with signs in the area?
Well, currently the location of the building is a corridor for homeless people right now, and I don't think that there is currently very much vandalism. I couldn't say for sure. But a lower sign would definitely, at 8 feet, would definitely be something that would be easier to vandalize than something quite higher.
Okay. In terms of the, kind of the special standing of Covenant House and nonprofit orgs, things that we want people to be able to utilize, find readily for safety purposes, and a host of reasons. The organization provides a public benefit, et cetera, and it kind of benefits the entire community. It was kind of referenced by Mr. McLaughlin. Is that your name, McLaughlin? I'm sorry. And how does this differ from other nonprofits, chambers of commerce, churches, a host of other nonprofit organizations that would that would kind of be in I'm trying to figure out, why are you in a different circumstance than these other organizations?
I don't actually believe that we are. I believe that the site doesn't lend itself to being able to see the sign. I think that it's a benefit that the services that are provided there are for the good of everyone, and that the intent of the sign height and the variance request is for the good of the neighbors and the community, to get kids in, not loitering around the building, and to get them into safety. They're not selling anything. They're providing a service that's positive to anyone, like the chamber and all these other things. But you simply can't see the sign from that. One of the main vantage points for youth coming to the facility. And so that makes the sign ineffective, and it really does hamper and hinder their ability to get youth to the place. Now, the one thing I think that sets them apart maybe from a nonprofit organization like the Chamber or these is that those youth are coming there at the worst point of their life. So making it as easy as possible for them to be able to pull the cord and get off the bus is incredibly important. And I don't think it's detrimental to anyone in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Winchester.
Thank you very much. Very supportive, obviously, of the organization, have for years. I think one of the things that is important is, as you mentioned earlier, is that it's a 24-hour facility, in difference to the Chamber of Commerce or a retail store or some other location. So in some ways, you are different, maybe, than other organizations and nonprofit organizations that would be operating, even churches sometimes. So we have a unique, in some ways, situation. Is that not true? I mean, I think I heard that in your presentation.
That is true. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, I noticed that you didn't particularly address the ones that were partially met. Did you have anything specific on item numbers 1 and 3 that were partially met? Because you spent most of your time on the ones that were not met.
I
1 and 2. Excuse me, 1 and 2. I'm sorry. On numbers 1 and 2 that were partially met versus the others that were not met.
Well, with 1, the special conditions that are peculiar to the land, I think that the fact that there was a lot of input, the Covenant House really sought to be a good neighbor. It's very scary for neighbors to have a crisis shelter moving into your neighborhood. No one necessarily wants that. So they started very early with input. And so one of the things that we did was we used that alleyway to support the neighbors' fears, or to allay their fears that there would be a bunch of kids just kind of loitering about. So there was lots of community input. The second thing is this site is next to a very, very heavily trafficked A Street. And so what we did was we set the building back as far as we could to get that, to increase safety. So I think that there are some unique conditions to the site, which include that the input gathered from the neighbors, being a good neighbor, and then that busy street. So that was 1. And then I guess it was 4 was your other question?
Number 2.
Number 2, excuse
2,
me.
okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry. Just 1 second. Crazy amount of paper here. Okay. 2. Strict interpretation of the provisions of the sign ordinance would deprive the applicant's rights that are commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same district in terms of use. Well, I think one of the things that we pointed out in our report is this is not a commercial-based organization. It's not a sign to entice people to buy things. It's a place where youth are redirecting their lives, and that the success of these youth is that they get into the facility easily. And again, these are not just Anchorage kids that know the downtown core. These are from kids from all over Alaska. The signage ordinance does not take into account the fact that we set the building back so far for that safety. So the sign is not seen as easily, and the crown in the road simply obstructs it. Even if the building was set right up against the property line, that obstruction would likely take place. The other thing is the Covenant House would be a poor neighbor if we left it wayfinding so that a youth in crisis wasn't able to find their way quickly. We would have kids wandering around there in the middle of the night looking for that front door. And the security camera issue, it really supports this provision of the ordinance. The police department helped identify some of those locations, and the sign at the lower elevation would obscure one of the important cameras. And then again, if we could have a bigger sign, but it wouldn't be as effective. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Tiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a quick statement and then a couple of follow-up questions. You know, I think of a youth crisis center as kind of like a critical care facility. It's almost like, not exactly, but almost like a hospital, and I would want to make sure that the emergency room access sign was clearly visible to the driver taking me there. So I kind of think about it that way. I guess my question is that, when we take that out of the consideration here and just strictly look at the standards related to economic impact and hardship there, I guess I'd ask the petitioner, if you were to represent a commercial enterprise requesting a sign variance, would you believe that because of the crown in the road and a sign at that elevation being obscured, that would negatively impact that business, that would impact the economic viability of the business having an obscured sign there? So if we looked at it from a commercial standpoint versus,
I would think that for two reasons. One, you really can't see it, even if the building was moved forward. You wouldn't see it because of the nature of A Street's traffic. But also, if I was a commercial business, I'd want to make sure that you saw my sign before you passed over 9th, so you could plan to get there, using your car. And it's the same for the child on the bus. You won't see it till you're passing it. So I would be here making the same statements about the economics of the business, that it's because of the topography of the road and the surrounding area, the sign at the maximum height would not support the economics of my business.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, have you had a chance to review staff's recommendations? There are 3 recommendations, and do you have any comments on those recommendations?
We did have a chance to review those, and we are fine with those. We have no comments.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? I'd like you to speak to the bus pulling the chain exactly, because maybe it's been a while since we've actually ridden the bus, but I understand the concept of what you're talking about, coming up the hill on A Street. If the light's green, the timing between the light being green and the stop at the bus stop and when you see the sign, I'd like you to actually speak directly to that, and maybe even, obviously, I don't know, but speak to that so we can actually identify that.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know the exact distance between the green light and the bus stop, but it wouldn't be long enough. I believe it wouldn't be long enough as the youth passed on the bus, as they came across the crown of the road, saw the sign as the bus passed, they would pull and perhaps get off much further down at the next bus stop. The bus on A Street continues around to go to the bus facility on G Street. One of the things that we found in input, because we also had the chance to travel to Portland, who have the largest homeless population in the world and have tons of these centers, is that the hardest part for a youth to make the change that Jenny talked about is that first step towards the facility. It's the hardest part. If they can get through the door, there's a huge percentage of success that comes from that. But the whole facility is built around making that transition from the outside into services real easy so the youth can check it out. And if a youth misses that stop, likely they won't come. It's terrifying to go. And we just don't want that to happen.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Hearing no further questions, thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Any brave ones out there?
I'd say I would make a motion, but I'm the chair. I would say we should approve it. And I think that for all the reasons stated, particularly that I think that, I mean, I'll let someone make a motion, and I'll speak to the motion. Commissioner Pratt.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve the approve the variance. I understand staff's concerns with the standards, but actually we really don't have any standards here. We're really taking standards that were designed for a separate purpose, that we don't know if they'll apply to these circumstances or not. And I appreciate their efforts trying to enforce code as far as they can, but in terms of this body and in terms of the everything from the mission of the organization to the impacts on the community and design standards, I think that this variance is well within the competence of this commission to decide, and we'll move with findings later if the chair chooses.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Commissioner Emerton.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that this should be approved and that this sign is actually going to be a benefit for people to be able to find the building and to be able to get the kids off the street and into the building. I mean, I drive that road every day, and you're right. That crest in the road, I think, is a huge reason you need that, because you can't see it coming down. And it's a one-way road, and you can't see it coming down that one way. So I agree that, it also, they're hindered by the site plan and where the sign is going to be. It needs to be that next height up.
Thank you, Commissioner Emerson. Commissioner Winchester.
Yes, I will be supporting the motion as well for all the reasons stipulated, along with I can assist with the findings of fact, several other issues that I think are important here. I think one of the most important things is we are the Urban Design Commission, and the idea is to promote the best of urban design that our community can provide. And with that stated, we have to step back and not allow words and dots on paper sometimes to keep us from providing the best services to our community. And this is certainly well beyond one of those applications where our community is going to be well served by what is really a fairly small variance in the sign ordinance. So be happy to help with the findings of fact, and I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Tiber.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, it is a motion to approve subject to staff's recommendations. Is that correct?
Yeah, staff recommendations 1 through 3.
Okay. And I do intend to support the motion. I understand the comments that the commissioners have made about the standards, and I guess I share the concern there. I think there's quite a bit of subjectivity to them, but I would argue that several of the standards that have been listed as not met. For example, standard 3 and standard 6 in particular have been substantially met, as demonstrated by the petitioner. So I do intend to support the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Because it is a public hearing and that we rarely approve variances, I would like to ask for findings from the commissioners, and you guys can go at your own. I'd like to give Commissioner Pratt the first opportunity to speak to findings, followed by any other commissioner that would like to speak to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'll go through just a few. I think that there really are special conditions that exist with this particular piece of property and with this particular use, which are really not applicable to land in the same district because of the things that we've discussed. Commissioner Emerson mentioned just the visibility of the sign and the need to readily identify where Covenant House is, how important that is to the mission of the organization. The fact that it is near a high traffic street for youth to be able to actually quickly identify where Covenant House is if they're in Covenant House. And Jennifer, I appreciate your showing up here and being willing to step up and talk to us tonight. I think that's important also in terms of the findings of the UDC, in terms of quickly being able to identify where Covenant House is and where that inviting entrance is to get off the street, especially when it's dark. Let's see. Let me see. In terms of hardships and inconvenience, I think that denying this could actually provide some kind of hardship or inconvenience for all the reasons that were stated in terms of accessibility, in terms of inviting and encouraging youth to get off the street when it is in their best interest to do so. I really don't see why granting this variance would not be in harmony with the design standards of the neighborhood. We did get 3 comments, 2 in opposition and 1 in favor of granting the ordinance. And one of the oppositions was simply because of the size of the sign. And according to the petitioner, based on the question that I asked, the sign would be granting the variance would enable them to create a sign that is as small as it would be. If we deny the variance, they actually might create a bigger sign. So I think that speaks well to the variance. So overall, I think that granting this variance does provide the applicant to make the highest and best use of the property and to provide a community benefit. So I will leave it at that and leave it to other commissioners to provide other findings.
Thank you, Commissioner Pratt. Is there any other discussion, findings? Commissioner Winchester.
Yes, a couple of other findings I'd like to add is one in particular is under item 6. It says will make possible a reasonable economic use of the land or structure. I think in this particular case, economic is a magic word that really doesn't belong there in this particular circumstance. So if we drop that out and just says reasonable use of the land or structure, we really do end up with a situation where it's a non-commercial building and we have a specific use that has a specific need and a very unique requirement. And that is to direct people to this alley entrance, which was a specific requirement of the community to move that entrance into the alleyway. And therefore, I feel that this is substantially met because we basically are denying them a reasonable use of the land or structure in the particular use that has been designated here, which is a very strong community use and supported by the entire community.
Thank you, Commissioner Winchester. Is there any further? Commissioner Tiber.
I also just wanted to note, and I think it's important to note in the findings, the support of the Downtown Community Council for the variance as well. I understand that there were 2 notes in opposition, I think from individual property owners, but or representatives of property owners, but I think that is an important addition as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Tiber. Commissioner Emerton.
I think one more important finding would be for standard site number 2, where it says the applicant reserves rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the neighborhood. One big thing to me that you didn't make a big deal about, but I think the fact that the sign actually blocks one of your security cameras is huge. And that's something I think every building in that area has a right to, is to be able to be secure and to be able to see around them. And if you put in that sign, currently, that's actually going to be restricting a piece of that you should be able to do, is protect your building and see the kids and help them.
Thank you, Commissioner Emerton. I think that's everybody. So I don't believe we have any other discussion. Is there any opposition to the motion to approve? Hearing none, that motion is approved. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I would just note that that Covenant House, unlike the Girl Scouts, doesn't favor obesity.
Is Monica still here? Should we call her back? We should probably call her back in so we can close the meeting. Are there any appearance requests? None. We have no reports as far as... Is there a staff report tonight?
No, there's not.
Any comments? Commissioners, open mic. Welcome, Commissioner Winchester. It is very nice to have you on commission. We might not have a short board in the very near future, which is nice to have, and we appreciate your findings tonight. Are there any other commissioner comments? Hearing none, can we get a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Tomlin, second by Emerton. We're adjourned. We're adjourned.